Welcome to the Jim Acosta Show, and we are following the latest in the killing of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. The FBI is expected to hold a news conference at any moment with some new details on a possible suspect in the shooting. My big guest this hour is Mary Trump. Mary, great to see you. Thanks for doing this. I read what you have been saying about what took place yesterday. You've been calling this the slipperiest of slopes, and it feels like that's where we are right now.
Yeah, Jim, first of all, it's really great to be with you. It's been too long and there
Way
has
too
been
long.
so much going on. And yesterday
Yeah.
was a very dark day, followed today by another one. The
Yeah.
24th anniversary of September 11th was just kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah.
I think that it's always understandable in circumstances such as this that people have a hard time knowing how to react. At least decent human beings do. And they want to take a beat and they want to make sure that they're assessing the situation properly. But we're seeing it immediately. We've got Democratic lawmakers to a person condemning what happened to Charlie Kirk, a man who was murdered for exercising his First Amendment rights, regardless of what you think about what he had to say, condemning political violence. On the other hand, you have the president of the United States of America and pretty much everybody else in the Republican Party blaming Democrats and their rhetoric for Charlie Kirk's murder, despite the fact that we know nothing about who
Yeah.
committed this act of violence or what his motive may have been.
Yeah. No, I mean, Mary, we should say that at the start of this, and for folks who may watch the recording later and so on, as of this moment, 4 o'clock Eastern, in the United States, we don't know who this person is. We don't know if they even have a suspect or know of a suspect, what the motivation behind that suspect might be. I mean, I'll just give a little bit of details from this is according to the Associated Press. The FBI released photos of a person of interest in the shooting of Charlie Kirk as investigators are appealing to the public for tips. We have a picture of who they think is a person of interest, I suppose, at this point.
Mhm.
The suspect is believed to have jumped off a roof and fled into a neighborhood after firing one shot and has not yet been identified, authorities said today. Previously, they announced they recovered a high powered rifle that may have been used in the deadly attack. And Mary, there's some video we're showing this of what looks like somebody running across a rooftop. But I mean, this was just also shocking to watch unfold yesterday.
Yeah.
We were all waiting there for about an hour or so to get the final news that he had died from this attack. This one single shot looked like it came from some 200 yards away. It must have been maybe a trained marksman, somebody who had sniper training. We have no idea, but I mean, obviously, you would have to be a pretty darn good shot to do this in one shot. But I mean, the way, and just to circle back to your comments on this, Mary, the way that the far right, people on Fox, seized on this immediately to make political hay out of it. I'm really worried about where we're going, the path that we're going down in this country. Like you said, there were Democratic politicians far and wide who came forward and said, we mourn Charlie Kirk, we're thinking about him, and so on. And Elon Musk is saying that the left is the party of murder.
Yep.
And it's just a massive disconnect, and it's disturbing.
The left is the party of murder, and we need to make the choice to fight or die.
Yeah.
So there's so much wrong with what's happening right now, and we're seeing the intersection of violent political rhetoric and the lack of sane gun policies in this country.
Yeah.
But getting back to the violent rhetoric part, I don't think an objective observer would come to the conclusion that it's either a both sides thing or it's a problem entirely created by the left. Um, I mean, I am on the left, so I guess in that sense I'm not objective, but I can also assess the situation and see how much more violent the rhetoric has gotten, certainly since Donald has been in power. He is a man of grievances and vengeance. He gives people permission to be their worst selves. This has only escalated over the last few years. And we can say that right now, in this instance, people like Donald, who, is an extraordinarily powerful person with an enormous platform.
Yeah.
Elon Musk has 225.7 million Twitter followers. So
Yeah.
this is not equivalent anyway. But they're not just pouring gasoline on a raging fire. They are literally the ones who started the fire. So I
Yes.
think
Yeah.
we do this country a disservice if we pretend otherwise.
Yeah. And I do want to get to that and how we should respond to it. My personal view is that we can't fall into the trap. We can't fall into the trap of responding to hate with hate. As infuriating as it is, as much as we want to be angry and want to respond and that sort of a thing. I mean, we should call this stuff out. There's no question. I mean, Fox's Jesse Waters was saying we're going to avenge Charlie's death. They're at war with us, whether we want to accept it or not. Everyone's accountable. We're watching what they're saying on television and who's saying what. And then Trump, for his part, obviously he never misses a moment to miss a moment. And he's just never going to be that kind of consoler in chief, that uniter that this country needs. And he says radical left political violence has hurt too many innocent people and taken too many lives. He's calling this radical left political violence before we even know what it was. It's
Right.
just so irresponsible.
Well, that plus the threat to hunt everybody down who's
Yeah,
implicated in this. And what does that mean? Implicated how? Because we speak ill of Donald Trump or we speak
yeah,
ill of Charlie Kirk. And I mean, this is another issue that is definitely uncomfortable for people. I think we do need to be honest about what Kirk stood for, and the kinds of rhetoric he engaged in,
oh yeah,
not as a justification. There is no
no
justification for what
justification.
happened
Right,
to him. This man was murdered in cold blood. I and it, to that point, I don't care what the motive was,
right,
and and to that degree, I don't care what Kirk stands for, what his rhetoric is. However, we can't separate the two things. Again,
yeah,
he's not responsible for what happened to him, but he was a significant part of how the right has been approaching uh, the divisiveness of the American people. How the
yeah,
right has been, again, with Donald at the lead, approaching the view that Democrats are the problem, that Democrats are the fascists, that Democrats are not worthy of protection.
right,
And that's the slippery slope. Like as soon as you decide that somebody who doesn't support you or stands up against you is open to be targeted in these ways,
yeah.
then how do you close that Pandora's box?
I agree with you. And listen, I mean, Trump, Jesse Waters, all these folks, Elon Musk, they're overlooking what took place in Minnesota earlier this year with the targeted killing of a state lawmaker there and her husband. And it was at that time that Trump refused to call Tim Walz, the governor of
Mhm,
Minnesota, saying it would be a waste of time. And he called Tim Walz a whack job or something
mhm.
like that.
Yep.
And to me, Mary, we just cannot. We're just never going to be able to count on Donald, as you call him, to be that kind of a leader. He's just never. It's just not in him. It's not who he is. He's practiced this art of pushing our buttons and dividing us for what? I mean, almost this entire century.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah,
would say, probably for his entire adult life.
yeah,
But it matters more now,
yeah,
obviously. And no, he will never change. He's been the same person for decades. And quite frankly, he's been rewarded for being this person.
yeah,
So it is a fool's errand to suggest that he will ever change. I see people still giving him the benefit of the doubt, and it,
yes,
it is mystifying to me because how much more evidence do we need, really,
yeah,
that this is who he is and this kind of behavior benefits him just as the divisiveness he is largely responsible for stoking in this country over the last decade benefits him and protects him.
yeah. And this this whole situation. I mean, you don't want to blame anybody for it. And I certainly don't blame Charlie Kirk for what happened to him. I'm very sorry for what happened to him, and his family. And I'm working on a Substack as we speak that I might put out tomorrow. I want to think about it. I want to think deeply about it. But, first of all, I wish he were here to be there for his wife and kids. And second of all, I wish he were here because it's better to have him here, to have that kind of debate in person to person. And something is lost when we see acts of political violence like this. It takes us down a path that I think it really is. I think it's destabilizing for this country. And I think what we all experienced yesterday was we all sort of took a breath and realized we could be facing a pretty dangerous moment in this country where we just might see reprisals back and forth. I mean, the State Department was warning people earlier today. Did you see this, Mary? A top State Department official said that they're warning foreigners, quote, foreigners in the U.S. against praising the death of Charlie Kirk, as if anybody's going to do that besides people who are just out of their mind. And to me, this person said, I want to underscore that foreigners who glorify violence and hatred are not welcome visitors to our country. When our own government is putting out warnings to people, watch what you say about Charlie Kirk, I just think that it's a disturbing and worrying sign.
It's extraordinarily disturbing and worrying, especially since it's so complicated. I mean, that how many amendments of the Constitution are they going to go after? My goodness. So now we're not even allowed to express an opinion. And you could say that one of the reasons this happened was because Charlie Kirk was exercising his First Amendment right in the context of a culture of a society that is increasingly preferencing those who engage in violent rhetoric. Again, not to blame him, but we have to be really honest about what's going on here. Not to excuse or justify it, because that's another slippery slope, quite frankly. But just so we can understand the root causes. And, we can go back to what happened to Paul Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi's husband, when she was still Speaker of the House. He was viciously attacked in his own home by a man wielding a hammer, and the right, including one of my cousins, glorified in it and mocked Paul Pelosi for having almost been murdered by a madman, essentially. So
Donald Trump used to make jokes about it. He used to joke about it. Remember that on the campaign?
Constantly. And so that functions as a way of sort of normalizing it.
Yeah.
And that's another danger here. It's like school shootings. There was a school shooting yesterday that got no attention.
No attention.
And honestly,
I did it on my show, but yeah.
Right. Exactly. But nobody else would have paid attention to it either, because not enough people were victimized by it or something.
And it should be noted, what happened to Charlie Kirk yesterday was a school shooting.
That's right.
It happened on the campus of a university. I mean, and so, we're continuing to see that, and we should have that conversation about gun violence. We need to talk about that. And as a viewer is saying right now, we still don't know why he was murdered. We don't know. We just don't know. We don't know what we don't know. And Mary, I booked you to come on, and I've been begging you for a long, long time, and you're very busy and all that stuff. And I'm so glad that you're here. But I did this before all of this took place yesterday. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about while I have you is, what has been your assessment of Trump 2.0? Because I covered Trump 1.0 at the White House. I was face to face with him and so on. I think this is sort of why you and I have a little bit of a connection, because we got to know, we know him pretty well. I don't know him as well as you do, but we got to know him pretty well.
Yeah.
It's much more dangerous this time around, I think.
Oh, without question.
Is that your sense too?
Oh, without question. I said back in 2020, and thinking that, Donald was only going to run in 2020, wasn't going to run ever again, that if he got back into the White House, it would be the end of the American experiment. And here we are 5 years later. And it took about 4 years to find out if the insurrection he incited against his own government was successful. The answer is yes. So not only are we dealing with the fact that 74 million Americans decided that it was a good idea to put an insurrectionist and essentially traitor to his country back into the Oval Office, the people surrounding him had 4 years. Actually, they probably started planning this in 2017. So almost 10 years to plan ahead. And we are seeing the fruits of that labor in the fulfillment of the promise, if you want to call it that, of the fascist playbook, Project 2025. And Jim, I think you and I have known this for a long time. Donald Trump is a symptom of a much larger problem. I mean, yeah, he's problematic too, of course, but he is surrounded by people who actually know what they're doing, who to whom he has ceded enormous power so that he can enrich himself or keep the loyalty of the base or whatever his motives might be. So we are seeing the systematic playing out of their dream for a unitary executive, a country that is white supremacist, white nationalist, Christian nationalist, a theocratic apartheid state, whatever their version of an American paradise, which of course would mean the end of our democracy and the end of our constitutional government. So I knew this was coming. As I think anybody who's been paying close attention over the last year would know that if he did win in 2024, this is what would happen. What has alarmed me, and I'm a little embarrassed to say I wasn't prepared for just how quickly everything would be dismantled.
Yes. I agree with you. And what makes what's happening right now all the more worrying is that, I mean, we've already seen over the last 7 months, they've learned their lessons from the first term. And we're seeing that, in the way that they've conducted these ICE raids, the way they have sent the National Guard into American cities with plans to send more National Guard troops into other cities, and the way he's talking about getting retribution for Charlie Kirk now with the way they've been conducting themselves. I think that should worry every American, that they're going to turn him into a martyr and seek vengeance, as Jesse Waters was saying, and go after Americans and use the instruments of government to do so. You have the State Department already warning so-called foreigners to be careful about what you say about Charlie Kirk. I mean, this should concern every American. We cannot go into this spiraling cycle of retribution and reprisals. I think it's just so dangerous for our country.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's so important to keep the context in mind. You mentioned the Democratic lawmakers who were targeted. One actually was assassinated, and her husband was murdered in their own home. As soon as it was discovered that the assassin was a right-wing religious extremist, there was no discussion of that anymore on the right. He was a lone actor and had nothing to do with anybody else. It didn't matter what he believed. It didn't matter that he supported Donald Trump.
Yeah.
You do not have that will not happen if we find out that the shooter in this instance was politically motivated from the left. That it will be used as an excuse to unleash horrors. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's a little troubling to see people. There are people out there who are celebrating this, and it's vile, and it's got to stop, because that doesn't help. It doesn't help anybody, and it says volumes about who you are as a person. Yeah. But in terms of the reprisals are all going to be at the hands of the people who actually have power now, and it will be officially sanctioned because the person leading the movement of grievance and vengeance is Donald, and he's sitting in the Oval Office. So that is deeply alarming to me as well.
Yeah. And Mary, I got to ask you, what do you think about the Epstein files? Have you ever seen Donald, as you call him, in the jam that he's in? I mean, just today, the UK had to get rid of its ambassador to the US over his links to Jeffrey Epstein. Apparently, he had written some emails to Jeffrey Epstein saying, "I think the world of you. I feel hopeless and furious about what has happened. Your friends stay with you and love you." I mean, these emails, I guess, were published in the Sun newspaper, and they were sent to Jeffrey Epstein after Jeffrey Epstein was indicted by a grand jury in 2006. This is all according to National Public Radio. But I mean, it just goes to show you that the tentacles of this scandal are far-reaching, and we're still learning new details every day. And I personally have never seen him in a jam like this, and I think he's freaking out.
Oh yeah, you're 100% right. He, for the first time perhaps in his life, has lost control of the narrative, and his usual tactics of stonewalling or lying or throwing a tantrum aren't working. And the fascinating thing about it to me is it's not because people like you and I aren't letting this drop, which we're not, because it's
Yeah,
important and the American people deserve to know what's in those files. It's because of Donald's base won't drop it.
that's right.
They feel betrayed. They feel lied to. He promised them. He made it a part of his platform that he was going to release the Epstein files because it was going to expose the globalists and the elites at the upper echelons of the Democratic Party. And now he's just saying nothing to see here, move along. And they're not buying it, and nobody's buying it. And he has painted himself into a corner. This is a debacle of his own making, much like, the fact that he's single-handedly tanking our economy, and he
Yeah.
can't change the subject, and it's probably driving him crazy.
Yeah. And the other thing I have to ask you about is his health. He does not look good to me. I don't know what's going on when he vanished for those 4 or 5 days, whatever it was, and then the bag
Yeah.
went out the window and they lied about the bag about the it was such a
It was
weird
it
week.
was AI,
It was
apparently.
it was so strange. And they were showing some video this morning, I guess, during the 9/11
Yeah.
remembrance where he didn't look so hot there. It does not look great to me. Maybe, he needs a nap. Maybe he just needs a cookie. I don't know, but
Pacifier would be good.
maybe.
Um, yeah, I mean, I've seen speculation from people who know better than I about these things
Yeah.
that his the right side of his face is sagging, and that could be indicative of TIAs. Like, I guess, sort of that present as sort of mini strokes. We know that he has edema, swelling of his ankles that is indicative of other things. So I think there are potentially three things going on. Some neurological issues, and my
Yeah.
grandfather had very bad Alzheimer's that
Mm.
for at least 10 or 15 years.
Oh, wow.
And he was around Donald's age when his condition worsened rapidly. Might have been a little younger than Donald.
Mm.
We also know that he's not a healthy person in general. He doesn't
No.
exercise. He has a horrible diet. He definitely has some kind of sleep disorder because he drinks like a dozen Diet Cokes a day. I'm not speculating about any other substances, but
Yeah.
caffeine addiction is a thing, and
Yeah.
it disrupts sleep. And the one thing I can speak to is that he's somebody who for decades now has had um, undiagnosed, untreated, and severe psychiatric disorders. And when you don't treat something, it only worsens over time. And
Yeah.
some of the things that make such disorders worse are massive amounts of stress, for
Mm.
example, plus other comorbidities, whether it's physical or neurological problems he's having.
Yeah. Well, Mary, I wish we could just go on. I don't want to hold you up because I know you've got a show to do, and it's been hugely successful. And everybody should check out Mary on Substack. It's kind of wild that you and I are both on Substack. We should do this more often.
We really should. I'll have to have you on my channel next time.
Happy to do it anytime. Just ask. And it's such a thrill to get back connected with you, and really just excited and thrilled to see you doing so well and thriving on this platform. So it's a great place. I mean, independent media is a wonderful place to be right now, I think.
It is, and it's the future.
It
So
is.
I'm glad we're here now. And Jim, it's wonderful to see you. I apologize it took so long, but I kind of went into hiding for a little bit, but I'm back.
I know. I know. That's okay. Everybody got to take a break every once in a while. Take a little mental break, whatever you want to call it. It's okay to do. But
That's right.
yeah, we'll do it from time to time. But Mary, let's do it again soon. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks so much, Jim. Take care.
Good to see you, Mary. Thanks.
too.
That's Mary Trump. She and I've had so many great conversations over the years at my old place, and hopefully we'll do it again at my new place. And speaking of somebody I really enjoy talking to is John Fugelsang. I want to bring him in if I can. John is the author of an exciting new book that just came out. Everybody knows John. He's a comedian. He's an actor. He's here. He's there. He's everywhere. And now he's on this program. John, great to see you.
Hello, Mr. Acosta. Thank you so much. What a pleasure.
It's a pleasure to be with you. And I want to plug your book because it is so important. And I was just saying to Mary, we did the booking before everything that happened with Charlie Kirk. Same with you.
Yeah.
But I do want to talk about the book, Separation of Church and Hate, A Sane Person's Guide to Taking Back the Bible. It's such a timely idea for a book right now, considering what you're seeing on the right now, the rise of
Exactly.
the Christian right. And I do want to get into that, but I guess your thoughts on Charlie Kirk. I saw you posted on X. Do these idiots even realize that shooting Charlie Kirk makes you an even worse person than Charlie Kirk? We should note we don't know what happened
Of course.
in terms of the motivation behind the shooter and so on.
And that was
But
posted before Charlie had died as well. I posted that when I knew he had been shot, but before I knew he had passed. It got equal hate from the far left and the far right.
yeah, no, I hear you. But the point behind it is, and I think there's something to it, is we got to get a hold of ourselves, and there's just no point, people on the right, they can do what they are going to do, and we can't stop the Jesse Waters of the world and the stuff that they spew and so on. But we can control what we do.
Yeah.
And to me, I think there should be no tolerance for political violence whatsoever in this country, if that's in fact indeed what occurred out in Utah. But your thoughts on this?
Well, I was raised by an ex-nun who had worked as a nurse with lepers in Malawi, and an ex-Franciscan brother who taught history and nonviolence and worshipped Gandhi and Dorothy Day and Dr. King. And I was raised to believe that Christianity was about the teachings and commandments of Christ, which centers around not using violence to solve our problems. Now, we don't know anything about the ideology of this murderer. And on the one hand, you've got people canonizing Mr. Kirk, who I had my dealings with, and he came at me. I tussled with him, and then folks on the left who seem to think he somehow deserved being murdered for his corrosive ideology. You can say all the things he said, and I don't need to go into Charlie Kirk's long litany and resume of racist and anti-woman comments. They're out there.
Yep.
And now, because of another faceless coward with a gun, Charlie Kirk's never going to have a chance to grow beyond that. Charlie Kirk is never going to have a chance to open his heart, to grow as a person, to open his mind. He's not going to get to lose some debates and watch Trumpism fail. He's not going to get to suddenly have a gay friend or a black friend who expands his perception of this world. Charlie Kirk's never going to have a chance to be a better guy than the ones some people are rejoicing is gone right now. And we've witnessed it, Jim. My book's all about how to use the Bible with a right-wing Christian, with a nationalist, with a fundamentalist, because hate doesn't work. Violence doesn't work. What works, I find, with Christian nationalists, the only thing that works is knowing the Bible, nonviolence, humor, and showing up in much greater numbers when it's time for election day. That's how you beat them. And if anything, this proves that violence doesn't work, Mr. Acosta, because we know that Charlie Kirk's racism and his sins are going to be sanctified now. They're going to become marble statues. Now it's going to become immortal, and he'll be considered a hero to many. His hate and I just hope that maybe some of our friends on the right will finally realize, oh, now that gun violence has happened to someone I love, maybe I should join the movement to try to reduce the shootings and stop the next mass shooting.
John, that is such a boy. If I could bottle what you just said there and sell it in a store, I would. I think that was just terrific. Honestly, John, what you just said there about just nullifying the possibility that Charlie could have grown as a human being and understood maybe the errors of his ways. And now that could have been a teachable moment for not only himself, but for the movement that he's a part of and so on. I think that is so smart. I think that makes so much sense. And we all have that kind of personal growth in all of our lives.
All of us, including those smug woke liberals who figured it all out. We also have
that's
more
right.
to
That's
grow.
true.
I mean, I wrote this book because we've all witnessed it ourselves in the last 30 years. How many of us have talked our parents and our grandparents out of so much homophobia that they thought was Christian, but it's actually, no, you don't. Charlie Kirk used to invoke Leviticus to defend killing gay men. Follow Leviticus. Christians follow Christ, and Jesus commands you to treat gay people the way you treat him, including those trans people who are this year's convenient scapegoat. I've seen so many hearts change, and look at the amount of conservatives who are so right-wing pre-Trump, and he crossed their decency line, and we've seen so many people expand their minds, expand their hearts. And so this tragedy, above all, proves that violence doesn't work, and it's not going to achieve any goals.
Yeah. Boy, that is so wise. I appreciate you saying that. And let's talk about the book, because I think it's a perfect segue to the book. In the way, and I was getting into this a little bit with Mary, Mary Trump, but Trump 1.0, there were so many examples of just total hypocrisy on the part of the Christian right when it came to
Yes.
Donald Trump, and you would see those
Yes.
images of Christian conservatives in the Oval Office laying hands on him. So to the point that now Gavin Newsom pokes fun at it with his own images of Hulk Hogan laying hands on him with Tucker Carlson and so on, Kid Rock.
Yeah.
And but there's a real serious commentary here, and that is he has been deified by Christian conservatives in the way
Yes,
that
he
perhaps
has.
Charlie Kirk will now.
Correct.
And you've dedicated a book essentially to saying, folks, you need to wake up here. This sort of flies in the face of what's in the good book.
This book is the most mainstream thing I've ever done, Mr.
Interesting.
Acosta. This is a book for believers of all faiths, for atheists, for agnostics, for sane conservatives, for anyone who's going to have to deal with one of these right-wing fundamentalists who thinks violence is okay if our side does it, who believes that God likes me better. So I'm not going to negotiate with Satan. If you're against me, you're against God. This is the essence of fundamentalism, and it's what's ruining Christianity and Islam and Judaism. Young people aren't leaving the church in droves because of the teachings of Jesus or because of God or Santa Claus or Noah's Ark or the Bible. They're leaving because they're turned off to the hostility, the cruelty, the prejudice, and the hypocrisy of so many Christian leaders. If your church is not saying love your enemies, but it's saying who your enemies are, you're not really in a church. And I wrote this book because I wish someone had given it to me at age 17, when I was raised to believe Christianity was this movement of peace and love and empathy and lifting up the least of these. And I turn on the TV and see the Jerry Falwells and the Pat Robertsons and all of these ex-segregationists and blow-dried televangelists preaching about welfare moms and AIDS patients, and wondering, how am I the same religion as these people? I think a lot of people in this country were raised religious, and they now consider themselves spiritual, because they're turned off to all this hypocrisy. And this is a book about what Christianity started out as, what it turned into, and why the teachings of Jesus are still worth fighting for and still very threatening to authoritarians in power.
Yeah. And I think about the immigration experience here in America and the way Trump is going after immigrants in a way that it's not just un-American, it's not Christian. It is just not, masked ICE agents without uniforms that have insignias on them, throwing people into vans, taking off, and we don't know, they might get deported off to a country they're not even from.
Yes.
In what world is that Christian?
Not in this world. Look, it's really simple. And one of my goals with this was to, when you're debating with your right-wing loved one or coworker, don't debate them. Make them debate the Bible, because the God of the Hebrew scriptures is unambiguous. He commands the Israelites to welcome the stranger, commands them to never take advantage of the alien and treat the alien as one of your own. Jesus goes one step further in Matthew 25, the judgment of nations, where he says that individuals and nations will be judged, heaven or hell, based on how they welcome the stranger. You'll never see the right fighting to put Jesus quotes like that on a courthouse wall or a classroom wall. But the reality is, God commands us to welcome the stranger. Jesus says nations will be judged by how well they do it. So your question to your bigoted uncle should be, why should I listen to you and Donald Trump and not God and Jesus? Please tell me. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have standards over who comes into the country, but it's the criminalization of migrants and asylum seekers, calling them illegals. They're Christian refugees. Call them that. It'll irritate the right people, and it's much more accurate. They're allowed to hate refugees. They're allowed to go ahead and persecute asylum seekers. They're not allowed to pretend they follow Jesus when they do it.
Yeah. No, you're so right. And I'm so glad, and there's a viewer there saying it's the most unchristian crap ever. I'm so glad that you have come to this. And it sort of reminds me a little bit of what we're seeing now from James Tallarico, who is this young kid. I shouldn't call him a kid. He's younger than us, running for the Senate in Texas. And he sort of comes at this from the same standpoint, which is, I'm going to win him. I want to win him over, not just at the polls, but in the pulpit.
Yeah.
And there's, Jimmy Carter. taught Sunday
Yes.
school. It's okay for progressives to be, kind of not wearing it on their sleeve. If you want to wear it on your sleeve, wear it on your sleeve. But I mean, to
Yeah.
talk about this stuff, why not talk about it?
But and again, like the right doesn't own religion, and religion
Yeah.
doesn't own spirituality. Religion doesn't own God. Religion doesn't own Jesus or belief. But for far too long, we've seen our Democratic friends cede spirituality to the right, like they've ceded the flag. And yet there are so many committed Christians, or at least people who don't identify as Christian, but they like the teachings of Jesus. And this is a time when progressive Christians have to align with non-Christians and with atheists, because the entire history of Christianity has been this struggle of authoritarian Christianity and then the Christ followers who resist. I mean, you had the Crusades, and St. Francis said no and renounced all violence and protested it. You had doctrine of discovery, colonization. Columbus is slaughtering people in the shadow of the cross. And the Catholic priest on his ship, Bartolomeo de las Casas, the first white person to ever do an act of protest in this hemisphere, wrote to the Queen to protest how the indigenous people were being treated. Christianity propped up slavery, and Christ followers like Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman and the Quakers pushed back. Christianity propped up segregation, and a Baptist preacher from Atlanta used scripture to shame white America with their own holy book. There's a great history of Christian activism in this world. And Christian activism has always manifested itself in resistance to Christian authoritarianism.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I learned growing up that Jesus was kind of a radical himself. I mean, I don't know if that's a radical notion, but that's
extremely.
That's the one I learned about, growing up.
He still is.
He still is.
He still is. I mean, anti-death penalty, forgive those who oppress you, pay your damn taxes. He says we'll all be judged by how individuals and nations care for the poor, care for the sick, welcome the stranger, and are kind to those in prison. I mean, you can see why this guy's threatening. And in his story, it was a few extreme conservative authoritarian religious combined with imperial power that killed Jesus. That's the same coalition we're battling now.
Wow. Well, John, the book is extraordinary. Let's show it one more time to the viewers. Can't wait I'm going to get a hold of this because I want to read this. Separation.
I'm getting you a copy.
I'll take a free copy, but I'm happy to buy one too.
Can I take a second? Can I take a second, Mr. Acosta, to thank you as a fan of actual journalism in a world of prompter monkeys and a world of shills, to thank you for actually bringing the truth to the American people above everything else. I host the primetime programming on Sirius XM Progress, and your work is an inspiration. Thank you for all you do.
Oh, I'm happy to come on anytime, and I'll do what I can without a prompter. I ditched the prompter to do this thing, and I tell you, I don't miss it. I don't miss.
Nah, you don't need it, right? You forget. You forget right away. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's more interesting in your words too.
Yeah, and we're talking about religion, so I don't want to quote Bill O'Reilly, but he had a thing about saying "F it" and do it live. But anyway, you know all about that.
You're making it look easy.
Thanks, John. Great to see you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, really appreciate it. John Fugelsang. And he has an exciting show on Sirius as well, in addition to this great book. All right, let's bring in Fanone. Fanone is here. I want to bring in Fanone because he's been waiting patiently. Mike, good to see you, man. It felt like we were in Sunday school there for a few minutes. I don't know if that's an unusual environment for you to be in, but good to see you.
I was an altar boy, man.
Is that right?
Yeah, I was. I was
didn't
a head
know that.
altar boy. It's St. Mary's in Alexandria. I haven't been inside a church since I got married, but yeah, it's been a minute.
It's been a minute. It's been a minute for lots of things, man. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, obviously, is Charlie Kirk. You and I jumped on the phone. Sometimes I feel like our phone call should be the show instead of what we do on the show. It's actually, I think it's better content, but I don't know. We can't record it like instantaneously, or we haven't figured that out. But
yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah, but your thoughts on all this? I mean, we still don't know what happened. I mean, you come from a law enforcement background. There's been a whole hell of a lot of speculation as to what took place. We still don't know. We know he was shot. He was killed. It's a tragedy, but we don't know who the suspect is, the motivation. We have a picture of a person of interest and not much else.
That's right. I mean, this investigation, it appears, I mean, from what law enforcement has shared with us, is still in its infant stages. They haven't released any information about a suspect. Like you said, we have absolutely no information about motivation. But unfortunately, many in both politics and the media have taken this opportunity or this tragedy really to take the opportunity to point fingers
Yeah.
and really continue to proliferate political violence and the threat of political violence in this country. I was on yesterday and I was doing Don Lemon's show for the breaking news, and we were talking about how, or I talked about how, no one has done more to foster political violence and the threat of political violence in this country than Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, his statements yesterday did absolutely nothing to, um, bring calm in this moment. He did the opposite.
Yeah.
And you had people like Jesse Waters going on Fox News, which we all know has a tremendous amount of influence over the MAGA sphere,
Yep.
and point the finger at the left, and say that the left has declared war on MAGA.
Yeah.
Again, before knowing anything about this shooter, before knowing anything about the motivation behind this, tragic incident. And obviously, you can imagine what the social media sphere looked like over the past 12 or 24 hours.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, it's as someone I know who occupies a similar space as I do, who has spoken out against this administration, also calling for an end to political violence. It's it doesn't look like our leaders, at least within the Republican Party and within the right wing media sphere, are interested in um, bringing calm to this moment.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the conversation right after this occurred and into the evening last night was we need to tone down the political rhetoric. We need to turn down the temperature and so on. Jesse Waters didn't do that. Elon Musk immediately said that the left is the party of murder. And then Donald Trump, sort of following those same talking points, said what he said last night, which is essentially that this is because of the radical left and so on, and the things that they say. And first of all, when we don't know what took place, and then they tick off all of these examples where they say people on the right have been targeted, and then they conveniently ignore things that have happened to people on the left, or the fact that Donald Trump incited an insurrection on January 6th, and so on and so on and so on.
Yeah, I mean, there's been countless examples
Yeah.
of people utilizing this moment to stoke, fear and violence amongst their supporters. I mean, I was just before I came on with you.
Yeah.
I was looking at an interaction between Congressman Derek Van Orden. I don't know if you saw this on the steps of the Capitol, in which he interjected himself into an interview that was taking place with another member and several reporters. Interrupted the interview and pointed at each one of the reporters and said, "You are responsible for Charlie Kirk's death. Each and every one of you is responsible for Charlie Kirk's death."
Yeah.
And you can imagine, I mean, one of those reporters sent me some of the posts and comments that they received after that, which were obviously incredibly threatening, because now Derek Van Orden has, placed the blame on journalists who are simply doing their job, and creating this environment in which people feel justified to use violence. It's exactly the same environment that resulted in January 6, 2021.
Yeah.
Exactly the same. You have, people in positions of authority, members of Congress, elected officials, media personalities with tremendous influence, spewing hateful, angry rhetoric, unjustified rhetoric,
Yeah.
and directing it at their political opponents, the political opposition, and creating a justification in the minds of their supporters and their followers to commit acts of violence.
Yeah. And when you have Jesse Waters on Fox, saying that they're going to avenge Charlie's death, they are at war with us, whether we want to accept it or not. Everyone's accountable. We're watching what they're saying on television and who's saying what. The politicians, the media, all these rats out there. This is what he said. This can never happen again. It ends now. I mean, that is some crazy over the top shit. And nothing happens to Jesse Waters. And Matthew Dowd says what he says on MSNBC. He gets immediately shit canned. And I'm not, what Matthew's said is what he said, but it's a far cry from what Jesse Waters said, for Christ's sake. I mean, I will say that Jesse Waters completely out of control in what he said, and Fox will do nothing.
Yeah, I was listening when Dowd made those comments, and I mean, it was a stupid thing to say. It was a stupid thing to say, but he certainly wasn't. He wasn't calling for people to commit acts of violence against fellow Americans,
right?
Which is exactly what Jesse Waters was doing.
That's exactly what he did.
You don't have to read between the lines. He was telling, his viewers that we are going to avenge, and obviously, when he says we, he doesn't mean he. He means you. Go out there and avenge, just like when Donald Trump said, "I'm going to march with you to the Capitol. We're going to fight like hell if we don't have a country." It's the same insightful, hateful, hate-filled, angry, violent rhetoric.
Yeah.
And I listen. I could be wrong, but I feel like I'm pretty tuned in at this moment, and I certainly didn't see anything other than condolences and calls for an end to this type of violence from politicians, leaders, clergymen, people who, are identified with left-wing politics, leftist, that was it. That's all and it's just, wow.
No, I completely agree with you. I mean, listen, I mean, there are folks on the left who made stupid comments after what happened to Charlie Kirk. There's no question about it. I'm not going to ignore that. I'm not going to gloss over that. But Jesse Waters has a pretty prized perch over at Fox. He's the host of The Five, and he has the Jesse Waters prime time, or whatever they call it. And he's saying things like, we're at war with our fellow Americans. It's absolutely, it's disgusting. And but I hate to even devote any time to it. But again, this is another example of Fox just being absolute poison when it comes to the political discourse in this country. And, how does this even honor Charlie Kirk to engage in that kind of rhetoric? Charlie Kirk, I mean, he said a lot of, insanely hateful things from time to time, but he at least preached free speech and said, hey, come and disagree with me on a college campus and so on.
Listen,
he wasn't go ahead.
Yeah. I'm not going to sugarcoat, who Charlie Kirk was.
No, me neither.
And I'm saying, like, this is a person who espoused hateful, violent rhetoric. And to the extent that I would even, classify him as a First Amendment advocate. I mean, I think he certainly advocated for his own First Amendment, and the First Amendment, rights of those who are politically aligned with him. But when this happened, as a father, my first thoughts were, of his children, and his wife, and that's where my mind went. And I'm somebody who has, almost lost their life to individuals in which, Charlie Kirk has aligned himself with. I'm somebody who has, experienced vile threats almost on a daily basis for simply speaking out and talking the truth. And yet I still harbor no ill will, nor do I celebrate what happened to Charlie Kirk. And that's what leads me to believe that, people like Jesse Waters, they don't give a shit about Charlie Kirk. They don't give a shit about what happened to Charlie Kirk. They certainly don't give a shit about Charlie Kirk's family. They care about monopolizing this moment and using it to energize their base and their viewers, and they don't really care what harm they cause in doing so.
Yeah, I mean, there's exploitation going on of his death, and it's happening on the right, and it's absolutely disgraceful, and it's sending us down a course where more people are probably going to get hurt. And I mean, that to me that's where I kind of held my breath yesterday, is that, I think we're now in a moment, and there's not a whole lot you and I can do about this, Mike. You and I can talk about this until we're blue in the face or red in the face or whatever. There's not a whole hell of a lot we can do to stop what is now, I think, happening, which is we're going to be in this eye for an eye moment. People on the far right are going to use this moment. You already have the State Department earlier today saying that quote unquote foreigners need to watch what they say. And Trump is talking about retribution. I mean, if you read between the lines of what he said last night, screw Jesse Waters and what he said. You read between the lines of what Trump said last night, he's talking about revenge and retribution.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, my concern when I watched his remarks was that, I mean, if you've noticed, he's said recently that it's the left's terminology, the use of words like fascist and authoritarian, and in describing this administration, which I think are completely appropriate terms to describe Donald Trump and his administration. But how will they interpret that language? Will they start arresting people, or coming after people that describe them as such, because they feel as though that language is insightful, and use this moment to legitimize their quashing or of the certain individuals' First Amendment rights?
Yeah. No, there's no question about it. And I mean, and again, it needs to be said, we don't know what happened.
Right. Yeah.
We don't know exactly what happened. And I should note right now, and Mike, this is happening as you and I are speaking, and this is according to local news reports in Boston. There's been apparently a large police response after reports of shots fired at the University of Massachusetts in Boston. Don't know what has happened there yet. Apparently, the shots were fired at 3:45 p.m. This is according to WCVB in Boston, which is one of the affiliates there. One of the other affiliates, WHDH, is reporting something similar, large police presence at UMass Boston. The other part of this, Mike, I mean, we had a school shooting in Colorado yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
This Charlie Kirk killing was a school shooting. It happened at a university in Utah. I mean, the gun violence, the mass gun violence that's taking place in this country right now is totally out of control.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's, I mean, there's so many components that go into, what happened yesterday, but, when you break it down, to its most fundamental, it's an example of, the same gun violence that's been plaguing this country now for decades.
Yeah.
And that it's just calling for some type of action on behalf of Congress. I mean, it's almost like, why waste your breath?
Yeah. No, it's pissing into the wind. Yeah.
And it's sad that even when someone like a Charlie Kirk, who is a prominent figure in right-wing politics, can't inspire other Republican politicians to at least open the conversation about, common sense gun legislation, common sense gun laws.
No question. No, it's
But
just not. It's not happening. Yeah, it's not going to happen.
no.
Yeah. Mike, good to see you, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, buddy.
All
I'll
right,
talk to you.
thanks. Talk to you soon. Yeah, and there's the picture right there. The FBI has a person of interest that they're looking at. This was released by the FBI Salt Lake City field office. They were supposed to have a news conference earlier in the afternoon. That was apparently postponed, waiting to see, what the authorities have to say. They were looking at that video of what looked like the suspect in Charlie Kirk's murder running across a rooftop there at that university in Utah. And they don't, I mean, we'll see if they have somebody and if they can find somebody. You remember the healthcare CEO that was murdered. That took a few days to unravel and for that suspect, Luigi Mangione, to get caught. But and perhaps something will happen like that in this case. We'll have to wait and see. But it bears repeating that we are in the midst of a gun violence crisis in this country. Just now, reports of shots fired at the University of Massachusetts in Boston. This is a UMass Boston tweet. Police incident, enter near Residence Hall, East Building, avoid area, more information to come. So don't want to extrapolate too much from that. Sometimes these things don't turn out to be what it looks like in the initial report, so we'll wait to see what happens. But the other thing that we have to mention is today is the 24th anniversary of 9/11. And I covered the aftermath of 9/11 as a very young reporter. That was one of my first assignments working for CBS News. I worked for their affiliate service. And one of the first things that they had me do was to go down to ground zero and report from ground zero. I've talked about this before. I'll talk about it again here, but I was doing live shots at the time above the pile, about 30 floors up. I believe it was in the Woolworth building, I believe is what it was called, on Broadway, right there by ground zero. And they picked that building because it could look down into the pile. And I'll never forget, doing those live shots and seeing the forklifts and the construction workers and the first responders on top of the pile. And the other thing I will never forget is when I was done on those days, I would go down to the ground and walk around, and I would see the ATM machines that had the pictures of the victims. Initially, there was a time period where people just didn't know what happened to their family members, and people just vanished. And they were taping pictures of victims onto ATM machines. I remember that. I remember seeing people, people think we only saw masks on folks' faces during COVID. I remember down in that area of Lower Manhattan, there were people wearing the hospital masks, walking around. And I to this day cannot get out of my head those images. And, working in New York at that time and going past fire stations that would have tributes put up to the firefighters who lost their lives, and just walking up and down the street in New York, you'd go past a open air restaurant, cafe, and you would just catch little glimpses of conversations, little snippets of conversations, people talking about 9/11. Oh yeah, I was there that day. I had to walk 60 blocks to get home. You couldn't get a cab, and I was covered. And so, you would hear these conversations all the time. I'm relaying all of this because these thoughts always come back to me on 9/11. I always think about that day, and because of the personal connection and experience that I had then. But I also think about it because of the way this country came together. People might not like George W. Bush and so on, but when he was down on the pile down at ground zero and he had that bullhorn moment, and he talked about going after the people who attacked America on that day. And there was a sense of unity. There were people, I remember the firefighters and the first responders who were coming from all across the country, to volunteers who had no training, staging and trying to help in the ways that they could, rotating in with the first responders that had been decimated in New York to help dig whatever remains they could find in the pile and so on. And it was such a moment of national unity. And it's one that I remember. It's one that I remember, but it's one that people Charlie Kirk's age and younger have no recollection of. These young Gen Zers and young millennials barely have any recollection of. And it's sad and it's tragic that there are so many young people in this country who don't recall a moment when there was national unity, when we had that brief shining moment of national unity in America, when we all felt like Americans and we all felt like we were in it together. And yes, it was complicated. And yes, the Bush administration, yada, 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 when it came to 9/11 and the aftermath. I get all of that, and people not wanting to give Bush any credit whatsoever for any of that. I'm not trying to go down that road. The road I'm trying to go down, and it sounds trite now, I suppose, to some people, and it might sound quaint and Pollyannish, but there have been moments in our history where we have come together and we were not as bitterly divided as we are right now, where you have people celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk or trying to explain it away or say that there's a reason why there's political. To hell with all of that. I say it's not right. And people on the far right trying to justify this and exploit it for political gain. It's just going to pull us even farther apart, folks. And I'm not both sidesing this. I am not both sidesing this. But we've got to figure out a way. I wrote about this in my book. We've got to figure out a way to have just a little more faith in one another. We've got to find a way. And I get it that the guy in the White House right now doesn't want any of that. He's profited and he's rode a wave of this hate and anger and hostility into the White House. There's no way he's not riding to the rescue. He's not going to bring us together. I don't really foresee that ever happening. But it is on us to avoid what we are on right now in terms of the road that we're on right now. It is up to us to pull back from this notion that you can have reprisals going back and forth. That is the future that I worry about, that we're on the precipice of, that we're on the edge of. We're on the edge of a cliff right now, folks. We're on the edge of a cliff. There is no place for political violence in this country. That is true. That should be true. But right now, there is apparently a place for political violence in this country. And we need to confront that truth. And we need to reject it at all costs. We need to reject that notion at all costs, that there's a place for it. And we need to figure out if there's a way on this 24th anniversary of 9/11. Next year will be the 25th, on the 250th anniversary of our country. If there's a way, even without the guy in the White House, for us to be a little bit more of one people, one country. I know that sounds pie in the sky, but it's something I'm thinking about on this 9/11. I hope you do too. My thanks to Mary Trump. My thanks to John Fugelsang, who's got a great new book out, and always my buddy Mike Fanone, who I had to get on the show. As always, enjoy talking to him. Thanks everybody for watching. Please take some time to do some deep reflection. Think about how we can get back to that place, being together as one nation. Good night.